'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
The children were nested all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap,
had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash.
The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes did appear, but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment that it must be Saint Nick.
More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name.
now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all.
And as dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound.
He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot. His clothes were tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimple how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry.
His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose.
He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Also at this time of year, many of us enjoy celebrating Kwanzaa, and his next book I've chosen is The Sound of Kwanzaa by Demetria Tocumbo. Come close, gather round, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Loving words and greeting family, we stand together for Umoja. Umoja means unity. One black candle gently shines to welcome our first Kwanzaa night. Come close, gather round, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Working hands and ancient stories, we learn our traditions of Kujichagulia. Kujichagulia means self-determination. One red candle gently flickers to honor our second Kwanzaa night. Come close, gather round, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Banging hammers and sweeping brooms, we share the chores for Ujima. Ujima means collective work and responsibility. One green candle gently shimmers to lighten our third Kwanzaa night. Come close, gather round, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Laughing shoppers and chanting merchants, we support our neighborhoods through Ujamaa. Ujamaa means cooperative economics. Another red candle gently twinkles to brighten our fourth Kwanzaa night. Come close, gather round, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Sharing dreams and setting goals, we plan our future for Nia. Nia means purpose. Another green candle gently glows to illuminate our fifth Kwanzaa night. Come close, gather round, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Beating drums and singing voices, we perform for Kuumbra. Kuumbra means creativity. Another red candle gently burns to warm our sixth Kwanzaa night. Come close, gather around, listen to the sound of Kwanzaa. Thankful prayers and loud harambes, we celebrate our lives for Imani. Imani means faith. The last green candle gently sparkles to bless our seventh Kwanzaa night. Harambee, harambee, harambee. This book has some notes on our pronunciations at the end, and then a recipe for no-cook Kwanzaa brownie bites, and some other tips on great ways to celebrate Kwanzaa. There's so many great values. And it has a bibliography if you'd like to learn more at the end. Again, that's The Sound of Kwanzaa by Demetria Picumbo.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, whilst visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash.
The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With the little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As he leaves, that before the wind wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky.
So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound.
He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot. His clothes were all tarnished with ashes and dust. A bundle of toys he flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, now they twinkled as dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn like a bow, and he had a beard on his chin was white as snow.
The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly, then shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf. I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to work and filled all the stockings, and then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sled, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim after he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
The final book I'm going to share with you today is Runaway Dreidel by Leslie Newman, illustrated by Kristen Brooker. You really must check this book out. The illustrations are fabulous. 'Twas the first night of Hanukkah, and on the 5th floor there was holiday hustling and bustling galore. Papa was shining the silver menorah. Mama was wrapping a gift for Aunt Dora. Grandma was slicing up 2 chocolate babkas. Grandpa was grating potatoes for latkes. Sister was stirring the soup with a ladle, and I at her feet spun my shiny new dreidel. Each letter flew by, Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin. It was making me dizzy to see them all spin. So I reached out my fingers to grab my new top. But that silly old dreidel, it just wouldn't stop. It spun round the kitchen and straight down the hall. It spun down the carpet and right up the wall. It spun through the bathroom, right over the sink. It spun through the living room, quick as a wink. It spun toward the front door, which flew open wide as uncles and cousins and aunts poured inside. Runaway dreidel! I tried to squeeze past, but it was no use, for that toy was too fast. It spun down the 4th floor, past Mrs. Gray's wreath. It spun down the 3rd floor, past Otto's sharp teeth. It spun down the 2nd floor, past my friend Pete. It spun down the 1st floor and onto the street. My family and neighbors all took up the chase, but they were no match for the dreidel's swift pace. It spun past the bakery right by the holla. The baker was selling cheap, 2 for $1. It spun past the grocer who gave us a treat to keep up our strength as we raced down the street. It spun past a shoe store and past a boutique. It spun past 2 delis, 1 kosher, 1 Greek. It spun over a taxi and under a truck. A cop tried to stop it, but she had no luck. It spun out of the city and on down the road. Out into the country, it never once slowed. It spun past a barn, a horse, and a cow. We kept up the chase, we couldn't stop now. It spun through a forest, past hundreds of trees. It just wouldn't stop, even though I said, please. It spun through a valley an inch out of reach. It spun through a clearing, then onto a beach. I ran after my dreidel, my feet in the sand. In a minute, my toy would be safe in my hand. But that dreidel just kept up its dizzying motion. It spun through the water, right over the ocean. And then, in a wink and a blink of an eye, my dreidel had spun itself up to the sky. It spun past the planets. It spun past the stars. At last, it stopped spinning a stone's throw from Mars. It sparkled and glittered and twinkled and shone like a jewel in the crown of a queen on a throne. We stared at my dreidel, our jaws all gone slack, until Mama said it was time to turn back. At home, we ate latkes and lit the menorah, and then, just for fun, we all danced the hora. We opened our presents and ate chocolate gelt. It was then that we noticed how tired we felt. My uncles and cousins and aunts turned to go, so we walked them outside to the street down below, where we said, standing under a star shining bright, Happy Hanukkah to all, and to all a good night. That was The Runaway Dreidel by Leslie Newman, with illustrations by Kristen Brooker. You can get all these books and many more here at the library. I hope you all are staying safe and warm, getting the time that you can with family and friends, and I wish you all a very happy holidays.
An introduction to a 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. In 1822, a New York clergyman named Clement Clark Moore spun together Christmas memories for his children. The poem he wrote featured a red-suited Santa and a reindeer-drawn sleigh, a never-empty sack of toys, and stockings hung expectantly from the fireplace. He called it A Visit from St. Nicholas, and it was then published anonymously in a newspaper in Troy, New York. It captured the public's imagination. The poem's opening line, "'Twas the night before Christmas," soon replaced the original title. One reason Moore's poem has endured is that it is a joy to read aloud. Beginning in hushed suspense, the poem builds to a dramatic crescendo as the rollicking verses usher in the mysterious midnight visitor. A tale of anticipation and wonder, the night before Christmas has become a holiday tradition in itself for many families. So as you open these pages, whether for a first Christmas or to recall those past, celebrate and share the timeless joys of this enchanting holiday.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care and hoped that St. Nicholas soon to be there. Yes! I knew it! The children were nestled all snug in their beds as visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there rose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below.
When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen.
To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound.
He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all trashed with ashes and stood. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back. He looked like a plumber just opened his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry.
Cheeks were all like roses, his nose was like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn like a bow, and the beard on his chin was white as snow. The stump of the pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke encircled his head with a wreath.
He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave to know I had nothing to dread.
He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk and laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team he gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Santa is coming to Boston. Well, boomed Santa, have all the children from Boston been good this year? Well, mostly, answered the little old elf as he bustled across the busy workshop to Santa's desk. Santa peered down at the elf from behind the tall tapering piles of letters that the children of Boston had sent him. Mostly, asked Santa, looking over the top of his glasses. Yes, but they are been all especially good in the last few days, said the elf. Jolly good, chuckled Santa. Then we better get their presents loaded up. Even though the sack of presents was really, really big and the elves were really, really small, they seemed to have no trouble loading into Santa's sleigh. Though how they managed to fit such a big sack onto one little sleigh, even they didn't know. But somehow they did. Splendid, boomed Santa. We're ready to go. Not quite, Santa, said the little old elf. One of our reindeer is missing. Missing? Which reindeer is missing? Asked Santa. The youngest one, said the elf. It's his first flight tonight. I've called him and called him. Just then, a young reindeer strolled up munching one large carrot. But the youngest reindeer was crunching so loudly that it was no wonder he hadn't heard the little old elf calling. Oh, well, never mind, said Santa, giving the reindeer a little wink. He took out his Santa nav and tapped in the coordinates for Boston. This will guide us to Boston in no time. With a flick of the reins and the jerk of the harness, off they went racing through the sky. Ho, 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 laughed Santa. We'll soon have these presents delivered to Beantown. Santa's sleigh flew throughout the starry night, heading south across the Arctic Ocean. Off they flew in the wintry air, crossing over the Gulf of St. Lawrence. In the wink of an eye, the sleigh was flying above Nova Scotia and Portland. The younger reindeer were very excited. He had never been away from the North Pole before. They were just nearing Cape Cod when suddenly they ran into a blizzard. Snowflakes rolled around the sleigh. They couldn't see a thing. The youngest reindeer was getting a bit worried, but Santa didn't seem concerned. In 2 miles, said the Santa nav in a bossy lady's voice. Keep left at the next stop. But ma'am, Santa blustered, I can't see any stars in all this snow. Soon they were hopelessly lost. Then, through the howling blizzard, the youngest reindeer heard a faint ringing sound. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. He looked over at the old reindeer with the red nose, but he had his head down. There was that sound again, ding dong, like the church bells ringing. The youngest reindeer turned around to look at Santa, but Santa wasn't listening. He seemed to be arguing with the little box with buttons on it. With a flick of the harness and a jerk of the reins, the youngest reindeer gave a sharp tug and headed off towards the sound of the bells, pulling Santa and his sleigh behind him. Woo! Cried Santa, pulling his hair straight. What's going on? Then, to his surprise, he heard the ringing sound. Well done, young reindeer, he shouted cheerfully. It must be Old North Church. Don't worry, children, Santa is coming. Then Suddenly the sleigh hit something as it plummeted through the snow clouds. "You have arrived," said the Santa Nav helplessly. Finally, when the snow had died down and the clouds parted, Santa discovered exactly where they were. Stuck right at the very top of the Bunker Hill Monument. "Everybody pull!" The reindeer pulled with all their might until at last, with a screeching noise, the sleigh scraped clear of the monument and Santa steered them safely above the Charles River, across Toro Drive, over Beacon Hill, and down into the Commons. Luckily, there was no real damage done, but the packages had all been jumbled up. Santa quickly sorted out the presents into order again. "All right," said Santa, thanks to his younger reindeer. "I know where we are now. Don't worry, children. Santa is surely here." Santa drove his sleigh expertly from rooftop to rooftop all over Boston, hopping in and out of chimneys as fast as he could. There were big chimneys in the Fenway and small chimneys in the Back Bay. He squeezed down pin chimneys in Charlestown and plummeted down from chimneys in Jamaica Plain. The youngest reindeer was amazed at how quickly they went. Santa never seemed to get tired at all, and it looked like the children in Boston were going to be very lucky this year. But the youngest reindeer was starting to feel a bit weary and quite hungry too. In houses after house, Santa delivered inside his sack were packages of every shape and size. He piled them under the Christmas tree and carefully filled up the stockings with surprise. In house after house, the good children of Boston in house after house, the good children of Boston had left out a large plate of cookies, a small glass of milk, and a big crunchy carrot. Santa took a little bite out of each cookie, a tiny sip of milk, wiped his beard, and popped the carrots into his sack. From Hanover to Chestnut Hill, from Cambridge to Brookline, from Burlington to Wellesley, and all the places in between, Santa and his sleigh visited every house in Boston. Santa delivered presents to Andrew, Allison, Anna, Arabella, Archie, Ashley. The list went on. Finally, Santa had delivered the last present on his long Boston list. "Great moons and stars," sighed Santa. "It's past midnight, and my sack seems as heavy as ever. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone." Santa opened his sack to check, and it was full of juicy, crunchy carrots. Santa divided the carrots among all the reindeer. "Well done," he said, patting the youngest reindeer gently on the nose. But the youngest reindeer didn't hear him. He was too busy munching. Then it was time to set off for home. Santa reset his Santa Nav once more to the North Pole, and soon they were speeding past Boston Harbor, over the Charles River, to the crispy, starry night. "Ho, ho, ho," laughed Santa. "Merry Christmas, Boston. Merry Christmas, Quincy."